Hello everyone and welcome to the Oxygen Solutions On Demand webinar. Oxygen Solutions is pleased to be a gold sponsor of the RAS Virtual Summit, and we hope that all attendees enjoy the great lineup of speakers the summit has to offer. We're here today with Grant Shannon, engineer, owner, and president of Oxygen Solutions, and Labardo Estupinan, engineer and researcher also with Oxygen Solutions. During this webinar, we wanted to touch on some of the key issues and considerations when it comes to oxygen supply for RAS systems. We've got a few questions prepared, but as Labardo said, let's just treat this like a fireside chat, and that's exactly what we hope to do over the next several minutes. So let's start with the questions for you, Grant, but please, either one of you, feel free to jump in with your thoughts as they come to mind. And so for Grant to start, what are some of the biggest challenges that RAS operators currently face with regards to oxygen supply?
Well, I think with respect to RAS, one of the key challenges is the cost of oxygen. RAS is still evolving with respect to technology, so not everybody is familiar with the latest things in the market. The biggest hurdle for RAS facilities is to get their operating costs low enough so that they can compete with net pen operators and make a profit, I think. The price of oxygen being one of the key input costs can help a farmer either make a profit or struggle to make a profit, depending on how it's sourced and on how it's produced.
Yeah, and also one of the challenges for them would be access to the oxygen market. When the RAS system wants to use liquid oxygen, for instance, there is not always cryogenic plants for liquid oxygen. So that will make the cost of that oxygen very expensive because the liquid oxygen will have to travel long distances, and that is where the oxygen generator business can offer a much more affordable solution.
Great, thanks guys. So both the access to oxygen supply, where that might be restricted, but also just the overall cost of generation. And Grant, you mentioned that it's one of the higher costs of operation. I think one of the top three costs.
Yeah, it's one of the key input costs.
Yeah. So, and then Grant, you did mention that people watching might not know some of the technological advancements in oxygen generation. And so maybe we could talk about the technology a little bit for the benefit of those watching. And Labardo, you have a lot of experience with the technology of Oxygen Solutions.
Yes, a little bit.
And so perhaps you can explain to those watching, how does Oxygen Solutions technology differ from other concentration providers?
I think the first thing that we need to be clear is that we create oxygen generator, we manufacture oxygen generators, but we use what is called VPSA technology, which is vacuum pressure swing adsorption. And that immediately puts in a different market or with a different set of competitors. So that set us apart from the traditional pressure swing adsorption. And the main difference with the PSA manufacturers is that we don't need to operate at high pressures. And that really reduces the cost of the oxygen generation because we just need to go a little bit above atmospheric conditions and vacuum to obtain the oxygen. Whereas in PSA systems, they need to go at pressures higher than usually 10 psi to produce oxygen. So that makes the VPSA technology much more competitive than the PSA. One of our advantages, the oxygen solution advantage, let's call it like that, is that we offer modular design. And we offer standard designs, but we also offer customized design. And one of the products that is being well received in the market is our containerized option because it's a plug and play system. They don't need to unpack anything because everything comes in a container. Once the container arrives to the fish farm, the only thing they need to add is power. And in less than 2 hours, they are providing oxygen to the whole farm using our system. So it's very modular, very fast to install. And so far, we've been having a lot of success, not only in North America, but also in South America and Australia.
Not only that, given the footprint and the format that these containerized solutions come in, if you need to, you can redeploy it to a new location, for example. That's really handy in net pen farming because you can move it from barge to barge or move it around. It also becomes easier to sell it if you wanted to do that. Say you wanted to sell it and upgrade to a larger unit. Well, now you've got something that's you can remove it and probably again just as fast as you installed it in a morning. Then it goes to a new site and it's in operation immediately there as well. So
one of the things that are part of the what some people comment about the VPSA technology is that it's a bit more expensive capital wise, but at the same time, we are getting to that point where we are almost at the same point of the PSA technology, which is traditionally it's been cheaper than the VPSA technology. The advantage of the VPSA technology is that the maintenance cost, the operative cost, is much cheaper because we don't need to replace molecular sieve. We have machines running for, I think Grant can correct me, the 10, 15 years, and we don't have the necessity to replace the molecular sieve. It's just the basic maintenance on the mechanical part. And now that we are getting very close to the capital cost of the PSA system, that actually put us in a much better position than our PSA competitors.
the other thing is PSA systems, they require big air compressors to compress air for the front end of a PSA system. When you compress air and not oxygen, you're already doing about 4 to 5 times the work. Because air is only 21% oxygen.
Correct.
So,
and that translates in a much lower power consumption per kilogram of oxygen produced when compared to the PSA technology, because in the VPSA technology, we are only compressing the oxygen we produce. We don't need to compress the whole air that needs to be fed to the machine.
Right. Great, guys. Thanks for that. And so clearly the technology is different in the way that it operates, and there's significant advantages to the end user, cost savings, but also ease of install and use. And
correct.
I know that Oxygen Solutions is pretty passionate about and committed to continuous improvement of the technology. There's a strong commitment to that, to making the machines as efficient as possible. So perhaps, Lebardo, can you just explain some of the research that Oxygen Solutions is engaged in currently?
Of course. So one of the key advantages we have is that we are neighbors of one of the University of Alberta here in Edmonton. And the University of Alberta has one of the most prestigious research group in the adsorption community. It's actually a world-leading research group. So we are in a research agreement with them. We are partners and we are doing a research project with them, which means that we are constantly improving, constantly evolving. And a good example of that is that in the last year, we've been able to reduce the power consumption of our generators by 20-25% average. And that in the end translate to a better product for the customer, and that reduces the operative expenses of a fish farm.
So the commitment to developing the concentrators and committing to the research is actually with the goal of improving the efficiency and lowering the cost of oxygen generation for the end user customer.
There's 2 key factors as I see it: cost of generation and maintenance costs. And so those are the 2 critical elements that we're looking at to reduce the cost of operation for the end user.
Awesome, and great to be connected to a program at the university that's world leading in terms of adsorption and the research that they're doing there. It's a significant advantage to Oxygen Solutions to be connected to that program. So Grant, let me ask you this. As the RAS sector continues to expand to meet global growing demand for fish and protein, fish is a protein source, and larger farms are being constructed, how do you see things changing with regards to oxygen systems and their requirements?
Well, as more and more farms come on and larger farms come on, there's going to be demand for greater oxygen capacity. And with greater oxygen capacity, bigger machines and that kind of thing, you're going to get more complex machines too, just by the nature of the requirement. I see redundancy and reliability as well as maintenance costs will all be considerations for these operations. And I also see new facilities being more highly instrumented and the need for better trained and educated personnel, because along with technology comes a higher level of expertise being required.
Yeah, and I think Grant mentioned something very important, and is the redundancy part. With bigger farms, bigger systems, it is critical to have redundancy in the oxygen supply. No matter if that redundancy is in terms of having second or third or fourth oxygen generator as a backup or liquid oxygen, But redundancy is key because fish need the oxygen 24/7 to stay happy and alive. So redundancy, I think, will become a very key factor, and reliability on the oxygen generators as well in the next couple of years.
Fish can't live for more than about 6 minutes without oxygen, so it is important that they have a redundant supply.
For sure. Important for fish and humans as well. We need oxygen to live, so critically important part of the RAS system for sure. Let's talk further about the capabilities of Oxygen Solutions concentrators. When it comes to optimizing the systems, but also monitoring their performance, can you guys talk about the remote monitoring feature and what you are able to control or optimize on the unit remotely?
It's been kind of a tradition, and it's been always included in our package, but now it's even better to have the remote access to the machine. For that, the only thing that we need from the customer is to provide an internet line, and that can always happen. So we also offer another possibility to connect to the machine using the mobile network, the cell phone network. And for that, we also can provide a device that can connect to our machine using that adapter. By doing that, the fact that we can connect and monitor the machine 24/7, that means that we can tackle any problem on the machine in a matter of minutes after it happens. And that remote monitoring is something that the owners of our generators, they really appreciate it, because we can immediately go and do all the diagnostics on the machine.
If necessary, to get it, return the performance.
If it's something related to the parameters of the operating conditions of the machine, that's something we can do remotely. If it's something that requires some hardware maintenance, then that's something that they have to do on site. But at least we can provide the full analysis of what's going on with the machine at any moment.
We can identify the problem.
With that remote monitoring, you have constant visibility to what the machine is doing. It gives you the opportunity to optimize it in the first place as it gets on site, and to make sure that it's working to the conditions of the site in which it's installed. And then also gives you the opportunity to respond if there's any problems or issues with the equipment as it operates.
Right.
Awesome. And so we sort of touched on this a little bit, but let's see if there's anything else we want to say about it. We often hear the term plug and play with technology. So I think that's a fair term when it comes to the installation of our oxygen concentrators. What exactly does a customer have to do once they've taken delivery of it?
Well, they should be placing it on a pad or level ground. Could be gravel, could be pad, could be piles. There can be some site preparation work involved. It depends on their particular site as to what might be suitable, but we usually consult with somebody on that and give advice on that. The next thing to do really is to connect the wiring. If they have the wire run, then it takes very little time. If they've got to go find the wire and connect it at the other end and then come back and connect it to the machine, then it can take a bit longer, right? Same thing with their oxygen lines if they're ready to go.
So a pad, oxygen, and power, and it can be up and running within, as you said, I think earlier, Grant, within a morning.
I said a morning, but let me give you an example. We had a machine delivered to Chile, and it was on the southern end of Chiloé Island, and we got there about 8 o'clock in the morning, and we waited probably for an hour and a half for people to be ready to work on the equipment or to work with us. In that particular case, they had a spare parts package which was inside the machine. So we had to empty out the spare parts from the machine and then connect the power and connect the oxygen and then start it up. But it was running, even doing all that. And we had to put some of the vent hoods on the outside too. So that's another thing that you may have to do from time to time. But even with that, we were still running by 11 o'clock in the morning. So it's often quite surprising to people that it's as easy as it is. They often have much more difficult things construed in their minds, I guess you could say, machines remotely as well.
Yeah, I would say that we provide all the specs that the customer needs to have once the container arrived. And it's actually a very short homework that the customer has to do. And it's just have the power line ready, which we send the specs in advance, have the pad ready where the container is going to sit on, and then have the plumbing line just to do a little bit of plumbing for the oxygen line, And if the customer does that homework, once the container arrives, as Grant mentioned, it's a couple of hours running because it's just a matter of connecting the power line to the container, and it's just a matter of hitting start to the screen, and in 10 minutes you will have oxygen
in your system, which is great. So easy to take delivery, easy to install, and then the remote monitoring gives customer confidence that our engineers can remotely diagnose and optimize the system. And it's long lasting and low maintenance, which gives them comfort and confidence in their oxygen supply in their RAS system going forward. So guys, let me ask you, I know that Oxygen Solutions is also working on the development of ozone generators to add to the lineup of products that are available for customers. So can you talk about the benefits of ozone in a RAS system?
Well, the primary benefit of ozone in a RAS system is disinfection and purifying the water, that kind of thing. While at the same time adding a bit of oxygen, but that's not really the function of ozone. It's to disinfect, get rid of bacteria, get rid of sludge waste in the form of fish waste and feed and that kind of thing. It basically just keeps the environment healthier.
So we've been working with some partnership that in the sense that we actually want to have an integrated solution or an integrated package for not only the fish farms and the aquaculture industry, but this package will also work for water treatment plants, for instance. And this will completely make things much easier for the aquaculture business because they don't need to go to different suppliers, one supplier for the oxygen, one supplier for the ozone, but they can come directly to us and we can structure and design the whole system around not only the oxygen system, but integrate that oxygen system to the ozone generation machine and have dedicated lines for the oxygen, for the ozone generator, and dedicated lines for the oxygen that goes to the fish. And we already have one machine under testing with great results in a fish farm in Vancouver Island. And our plan is continue offering that solution, improving on that, and maybe that will become something that is common in our business unit.
So providing customers with the opportunity to have a one-stop shop for both the oxygen generation requirements, but also the ozone requirements, and both of those contributing to high purity oxygen supply and a reliable oxygen supply in the RAS system, but also helping to ensure that the RAS system and the water quality is highly efficient and as good as it can be.
Correct.
Great. Thanks, guys. Listen, I have one final question for you. One of the things that we're passionate about at Oxygen Solutions is really understanding the aquaculture industry. And I know, Grant, you spend a lot of time reading, as I do, about that industry so that we're intimately familiar with it. We want to know ultimately about the people that are involved. And really, we want to understand their passion for growing great fish. And so in the world of animal husbandry, it's common to talk about animals as having personality and emotion. And those who raise animals often take great pride in growing the highest and the best quality animals that they can. And I believe that that's the case of many people who are tuning into and taking part in the RasTech Virtual Summit in RAS Farms. And so this led us to a really intriguing question and kind of a fun one to think about. The question is, can a fish be happy? And if so, how can you tell that a fish is happy?
Maybe I'll talk about that to start with. My wife and I grew koi fish here on our acreage for many years. And when you think of fish, you don't think of fish having personality or being able to be attracted to people or anything like that. But over time, we found that we could kneel beside the pond and they would swim up and you could scratch them on the head or stroke their backs and that kind of thing, which must have been a happy fish. But I think there's a couple of key ingredients to happy fish, and one is food and the other is oxygen. I mean, they're wired that way to survive, right? Fish you always see searching for food, and they can't exist in an environment where there isn't any oxygen either. Those are a couple of key ingredients. Probably not a lot of people have had the same kind of experience as us, but here's my wife and I. But anyway, it's kind of humorous in a way.
Well, and Grant, we talked about in a previous conversation, we talked about some of the behaviors that you notice in fish that tend to be happy, and if not happy, certainly healthy or a combination of the two where they respond to food quickly. Can you talk about some of the other things that we would see in terms of behavior of fish that are happy and healthy?
Well, I think happy is healthy. Number one, being active and swimming around and cruising around and that kind of thing, not just laying dormant, I think are all indications of a fish that's happy. It's got energy. It's got life force. It's, it's not just sitting there. I don't know. Maybe you've had some different experiences, Lombardo.
For me, I think I agree with Grant, and to complement that, I would say that it's very similar to what for us humans things that make us comfortable, and is to live in a clean environment. And at least I can notice that when I'm in a polluted city or in a polluted environment with a lot of contaminants are in the environment, I don't feel good. I feel cranky. I don't feel that I can perform at my best. And I think it is the same for fish. If they are not in a good environment, which for them the environment is the water. So if the water is not good quality, it's not clean, not purified, not well oxygenated, they will be the same. They will be cranky, they won't eat enough, they won't grow at the rate they are supposed to grow, and they won't taste good. So, and that's important for the owner of those fish. So I think the fact that oxygen is a key essential part for the fish to live in an excellent environment, that translates directly into having a fish that can grow much faster, that will eat more and better, and it will taste better.
Yeah, which is ultimately the end goal, right? Is great
exactly
fish for consumers. When a great piece of fish ends up on your plate and you taste it, you know that it's the happiness. Grant, your point was well taken. Happy fish are healthy fish. Healthy fish are happy fish. And healthy fish taste better. And that's the ultimate goal. And so that's why we wanted to ask the question of what the behaviors are of fish that are happy. How can you tell if fish are happy? And so I think you guys touched on some really key behavioral characteristics of fish that are happy. And that leads to, as you said, Lombardo, bigger fish weight, growing to bigger size, growing to in a healthy environment. And ultimately, when that fish is eaten, it just ultimately tastes better. And I think that is the goal of all of the fish farmers, is to have the best tasting fish on the market.
Correct. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, Grant and Lombardo, thank you very much for joining me to chat about all things oxygen and RAS. It's been a great conversation, and for those watching the on-demand webinar, we hope that it's been insightful for you. For Summit attendees and those watching you, we encourage you to connect with us at osioxygen.com and take advantage of our free oxygen system sizing consultation that we're offering to participants of the RAS Summit. And in addition, if you've been contemplating the addition of on-site generation to your RAS operation, we are offering a 10% discount on purchases that are made before the end of December for any unit larger than the OSI 500, of which we can help you determine which size is best for your operation. And again, we just like to encourage you to contact us for free consultation on the sizing requirements for oxygen or ozone in your RAS operation. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.